Since 2014, at least 125 Russian service members from occupied Crimea have been captured, with the majority likely being citizens of Ukraine. These figures are provided by the President's office in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, directly confirming the scale of losses and captivity in the region. Confirmed the capture of at least 125 Russian servicemen from Crimea. The majority are likely Ukrainian citizens, the President's office in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea said. According to the office, at least 2,235 Russian service members from units stationed in Crimea have died in the war. Of them, 132 are likely Ukrainian citizens. This information underscores the scale of losses among the occupying formations and the broader consequences of the war. Monitoring such data highlights the heightened tensions and losses resulting from the war, particularly among those from occupied Crimea who were involved in combat. Since the beginning of the temporary occupation of Crimea, Russia has applied its own legislation on military service to this territory in violation of international law. The mission of the President of Ukraine in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea reported that Russia started the 22nd illegal conscription campaign into its armed forces in the temporarily occupied Crimea. The 22nd conscription campaign is currently underway, running from October the 1st through December the 31st, 2025. The exact number of individuals targeted in this latest drive remains unknown. Since the beginning of the temporary occupation of Crimea, Russia has applied its own legislation on military service to this territory in violation of international law. The mission recalled that an illegal, forced conscription of residents into the Russian armed forces is being carried out, which directly violates the provisions of the Fourth Geneva Convention and qualifies as a war crime. Russia has illegally conscripted at least 53,000 residents of occupied Crimea into its armed forces through 21 recruitment campaigns since annexing the peninsula in 2014. Russia has significantly expanded its conscription apparatus since 2023 through legislative changes that digitalize military registration. These include creating a unified register of conscripts and introducing electronic summons, and that became operational in occupied Crimea in May 2025. The system allows conscription without physically delivering summons to individuals. New provisions enable conscription decisions throughout the year, with Russia planning to transition to year-round conscription in 2026. The occupation authorities have prosecuted 626 Crimean residents for evading illegal military service since 2015 under Article 328 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation, with 317 cases initiated after February the 24th, 2022, when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Courts have handed down 515 convictions, issued 56 fines, and closed 7 cases due to active repentance. In total, 570 individuals have been held accountable, 567 for evading military service, 1 for evading alternative service, and 2 for assisting evasion. Fines ranging from 5,000 to 50,000 rubles comprised 86.8% of sentences. 10 individuals were convicted repeatedly for evasion, including 1 person convicted 3 times. 7 cases involved prosecution following a previous fine. Crimean Tatars face disproportionate persecution, accounting for 32% of those convicted, despite being a minority population. The mission highlighted that while convictions formally exempt individuals from mandatory military service until sentences are expunged, this does not prevent mobilization because the relevant article is not included in exemption lists. The mission of the President of Ukraine in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea noted that none of the published illegitimate court verdicts reference or apply the Fourth Geneva Convention, indicating a complete disregard for international humanitarian law norms, according to the report. Russian Z channels are reporting that Putin's army wants to occupy Kondratovka and that the Russian armed forces are preparing to cross water obstacles under fire from the Ukrainian armed forces for this purpose. But in Sumy, the Russians faced fierce resistance from the Ukrainian army and continued to suffer heavy losses. Especially during the crossing of the Sumy rivers, the destruction of the Russians was recorded more often. Against this background, the rivers were observed to be filled with the bodies of Russian soldiers. A Russian military blogger, allegedly affiliated with the northern group of forces of the Russian armed forces, stated that the command of the 3rd Battalion of the 810th Marine Brigade of the Russian Navy, operating in the Kondratovka area, plans to solve problems related to poor training and unmotivated reinforcements by conducting attacks with numerous assault groups from various directions, including by forcing a reservoir near the village. A Russian military correspondent claims that the insufficient number of trained medical personnel in the motorized rifle regiment formed from servicemen of the strategic missile forces is forcing civilian volunteers and conscripts to provide assistance to wounded soldiers in the overcrowded conditions of the rented buildings of the Belgorod City Clinic. A military correspondent claims that Russian military command relies on civilian volunteers to provide medical care to wounded soldiers and accuses unidentified individuals of stealing credit cards, documents, and money from the wounded. Drone operators from the Russian 1st Battalion of the 217th Airborne Regiment are carrying out strikes on Ukrainian logistics facilities in the Sumy region. Drone operators from the Anvar Special Forces Unit are carrying out strikes on Ukrainian troops and energy infrastructure facilities in the border areas of the Chernihiv region. Ukrainian forces have stabilized the situation in Sumy Oblast and pushed the Russian army further away from Sumy, the region's capital. Ukraine's General Staff reported earlier, Moscow launched its new summer campaign in May, aiming to push deeper into Ukraine's northeastern and eastern regions and disregarding Kiev's calls for an unconditional ceasefire. The Russian offensive's goal is to reach the administrative borders of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts in the east and create a buffer zone in the border areas of Sumy and Kharkiv oblasts. According to Ukrainian soldiers who spoke to the Wall Street Journal, Russian forces outnumber Ukrainian units 3-1. Large-scale assaults, described within the Russian military as meat assaults, have become a primary tactic. Independent military analyst Yan Matviev told the Washington Post, "These mass assault tactics are the only thing the Russian military is capable of at the moment. And it's very inhumane because, in fact, dead people are being traded for territory. What we have in the Russian army now is a lot of soldiers, but they have no training," Matviev told. Apart from troop numbers, Russia holds an advantage in ammunition supplies and missiles, according to the Washington Post. However, according to Matviev, Russian forces still struggle to conduct complex operations in Ukraine due to shortcomings in intelligence, insufficient weapons and equipment, corruption, logistical disruptions, and inadequate training. As a result, Matviev believes that while the summer offensive is unlikely to yield a breakthrough for Russia, it could still seize several thousand square kilometers of Ukrainian territory.